Welcome back to another edition of the Fanatics View Hockey Show. I am James Lynch. Always great catching up with my next guest. You've seen him on here before many times. Does some great work over there at Canucks Army. It is Dave Hall back on the program. Mic issues fixed. We are here. We are good to go. Dave, how you doing, man?
Good. Always with mic issues. It just it always seems to follow me. So no, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Good to be on here again.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you, and wish we were talking about Team Canada winning a gold medal. They come up short. We'll start there first, Dave. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about sort of the post Team Canada disappointment in the gold medal game. What was your overall thoughts now that we've had a couple days to digest things? What was sort of your overall thoughts on Canada's performance in that tournament and kind of looking ahead to the future?
Well, in terms of the performance, I don't really think you can have anything negative to say. I thought, apart from a couple issues each, in a couple games here and there, like they were especially in that gold medal game. I mean, they were definitely, I think even the Americans will admit it that, Canada was definitely the best team in that game. They just, for whatever reason, the big dogs couldn't finish and get that puck in the back of net. So, the whole viewing experience was amazing. It's just nice to have the players back. Overall, it was awesome. Obviously, just got a little short there. So overall, though, fantastic week.
Yeah, and if people want to get my instant reaction to the gold medal game, I was on the Texas Hockey Podcast, which is on this channel, and
nice.
You can hear me. You can hear my therapy session with Travis Tyler as I talk about Team Canada. But honestly, I wasn't that disappointed either. Like I thought they played well. They got goalied. It happens. You and I have been around hockey long enough. That'll happen in games. There's not too much to take away. I hear people talking about roster construction and all that. There's like a few little things, like maybe Matthew Schaefer is on the team. Maybe Connor Bedard's on there. I mean, really, I don't think this was a roster issue. And something that I'm glad people are speaking up about is that this wasn't a Jordan Binnington issue either.
No.
He played great. He made some key saves. The score could have been much different. That first goal was kind of tough, but hey, overall, I thought Binnington played great. And what a difference I think the biggest thing we learned from this tournament is that, man, St. Louis is bad, right? Like Binnington's having a career worst season and he steps up and plays really well in this tournament. So I kind of feel the same way. Now, obviously, you're the man when it comes to prospects and everything else. That's the part I'm excited about. Even in 2 years with the World Cup, we're going to have an influx of players coming in. Obviously, we know Gavin McKenna is someone, I don't know if he'll make the team, but he's someone that there's some excitement for. Landon Dupont. There's a lot of good Canadian prospects coming up through the pipeline. As someone who kind of keeps an eye on that, how excited are you for that potential of, it seems like there's a lot in the pipeline for Canada going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And this tournament was kind of cool because it was almost like a passing of the torch, like you had Sidney Crosby, you had McDavid, then you had Celebrini, who's kind of that next echelon up. And then, you're going to welcome Connor Bedard, who's definitely going to be there, Matthew Schaefer. I do agree that if there was one minor change, I think the team probably could have used that dynamic, skating ability, ability to drive play up the ice from Matthew Schaefer. So, he's going to be an instant addition for years to come. And as you mentioned, Landon Dupont too. I mean, obviously he's still a young man, so we'll see how long it takes for him to kind of, put himself into the mold. But at the very least, there's a lot of exciting young talent coming up. So I'm excited. Just Celebrini, Bedard, and Schaefer is just insane. Like, how impressive was Macklin Celebrini? I mean, 19 years old. He was one of the best players in the tournament. Like, if they won, obviously McDavid was going to take that MVP, especially if they won. But Celebrini was right up there, especially as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and I think we all had expectations of how good Celebrini was going to be, when we saw him get drafted, but he's exceeded expectations, Dave. Like, I didn't expect him to sort of be this almost MVP caliber type player, especially in a big tournament like this. Like, I am so excited for the future with Macklin Celebrini, and obviously around these parts, it's just cool to have, a number of Vancouver guys that are, really thriving right now in the NHL, and there's a lot of promise there. So that's super exciting. Now, probably the worst part, because people ask me, how are you feeling after Team Canada? The part that I'm disappointed in is now we got to go back to all the Vancouver sports hockey teams, not just the Canucks. We've got the Giants. They're not in playoff position. They've had some injuries. They made that big trade earlier in the year, getting Ginla and trading out Cameron Schmidt. And now the Abbotsford Canucks, who I know you cover quite well, it hasn't been a good season. And a lot of that is the turnover. So we're kind of, prepping for that. I guess first where we can start, this Jonathan Lekramaki season-ending, surgery. I think it was needed. We know Abbotsford's most likely not going to make the playoffs. Was this something like, I guess he was just playing through it? Because I wasn't too familiar with the shoulder injury.
Yeah, it's something I've known about it for a while. It's something that I haven't really put out there just because it's been lagging or lingering for a little bit. It sounds like, and potentially even a couple of seasons. I think it's just been something that's been bothering him. And, it's kind of crazy because you look at some of his goals that he scored as early as last week, and you're thinking like, wow, if you had a shoulder injury, it'd be who knows what that shot could be like if he was fully healthy. But, it's kind of one of those things where it sucks. If it's needed, it's probably best to get it done now, because I think the one thing that we've learned about Jonathan Lekkerimäki is that he needs strength and he needs speed, and you need to work on that in the off season. And so, I'm not entirely sure what the recovery time looks like, but if this allows him to, actually have an off season, because he didn't really have one last year. They had a really deep playoff run, and by the time it was all said and done, he had a month and a half to, figure out all the stuff that he needed to do. So that just isn't a lot of time. So hopefully now, he'll be able to come back with at least 3 months of just, trying to figure out what he needs to do. Like, the nice thing is it's a shoulder. He can still work on that skating. I think that's going to be a really big pusher to whether he's making that team next year. And then, of course, just strength. So it sucks. But like you said, there's nothing to play for in this season. Abbotsford's 10 points out. Canucks are fighting for that last place spot. So at this point, it's just not it's not a viable season. Let him go. It's the same thing with almost anyone. If you're Heedle's the same way. If you got something going on, shut him down. It's just that season.
Yeah. Just one more thing on Lekkerimäki, and we'll get a couple questions here, and then I got some Canucks stuff to get into. But is there been any chatter? Like, I do wonder this, and I'm sort of the outside looking in. Has there been any chatter about how injured, Lekkerimäki's been over his career? Like, that he has missed a lot of time with different injuries. Is there like a narrative now that, like, not that necessarily he's injury prone, but maybe he's not going to be what we think he is because of these injuries? Is that a narrative at all?
Well, I mean, like inside circles for sure. Like, I'm, whether the Canucks agree or not, that's one thing. But I mean, at this point, you kind of have to. I mean, this is dating back pretty much every single season now. He's had some sort of major injury that has kept him out. That includes an illness, the mono a couple of years ago. So, like, I don't know if it's gonna. I wouldn't say it's the reason that he's not, might not make it as what we thought he would be, but it's definitely an issue. At this point, it has to be. It's every single season, and we all know that physically he's not quite up to snuff. So you got to wonder if that's taking its toll, or I just think we've now we all assumed, but now we've seen it hand in hand. He's a high end goal scorer at the AHL, but can't quite sniff it at the NHL level. He's got to get stronger. It's just. Like I said, we all assumed that was going to be an issue, but now it's pretty evident that he needs to get stronger. He needs to get faster if he's going to actually make a difference at the NHL level. So I don't know if it's directly, like I said, I don't know if we can directly, tie it down to the injuries, but it's definitely not helping.
Yeah, no, it's just something to maybe keep an eye on. Again, kind of disappointing just with how high the Canucks picked him and everything else. Let's get a couple questions here. We got Noah saying thoughts on Matthias Preston. Seems a bit like McKenna light. Are you familiar with him very much? I don't know too much about him. Yeah,
Matthias Preston. Yeah, he's a kid that was like at the starting of the year, most people had him pegged for top 10. I think he's definitely fallen throughout the year, mainly because of his size and just he plays his size. We just talked about Lekkerimäki that's going to need to add some weight. Matthias Preston's going to have some weight. However, if he does, he's one of my favorites in the draft. He's like electric offensively. He's so much fun. Just got traded to the Giants. He's currently injured at the moment, but I think he's a player that is going to drop. And realistically, if you're looking for a high upside swing with that Minnesota Wild pick for the Vancouver Canucks, he realistically could be in that range. So he's definitely a player that I'd be keeping tabs on. Like I said, high offense, super fun. Definitely needs to add some weight to his body, but if he can, he's an electric. He's a little water bug out there. So.
Has there been any? I just thought of this because we're coming up to the draft obviously pretty soon, and we'll definitely get you back on because you're one of the best at this stuff. But Caleb Malhotra, has there been any talk about the Canucks maybe like obviously they're going to pick at the very top, but has there been any talk about maybe trying to get another pick to get him? Is that even a thing with obviously Manny coaching in Abbotsford?
Well, I think it's a great question, and one that is like hopefully. I mean, it's a bit of a tough one because I think it all comes. If they win the draft lottery and get first or even second, I think it's pretty safe to say that they're probably going to go of either Gavin McKenna or Ivor Stenberg.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you get third overall, or let's just say you drop in the standings and you come 31st and you get fourth overall, what do you do then? I think that's when Caleb Malhotra is probably going to come into play. Not only Caleb Malhotra, but I think that's when that second pick is going to come into play. Like, could you trade down a bit and potentially get a second first round pick, right? And then recoup too. Because the thing is Caleb Malhotra, he's a fantastic player. He's going to be a fantastic player. Is he third overall caliber? I don't know if I'm so sure. Yeah. I think, you're looking at more of a Keaton Verhoeven, Chase Reed kind of scenario there. So if you are looking at Caleb Malhotra, which I know that they are, they have checked in, is that a candidate? Is third overall a candidate to kind of drop back if at all possible? So I don't know. It's going to be a risky one. I'm not convinced he's a third overall pick. So if you were to look at him, it would have to be but this, at the same time, he's a top 10 pick. So, you're not getting him unless you fall back or unless you trade down. So I don't even think any of the players that they have on the roster currently can net a pick that would get him. So really, it would all be about trading down on that third overall, fourth overall pick.
Yeah, and we'll talk more draft stuff in a bit because obviously I always like to pick your brain about that stuff. Bouchard might have helped drive offense, but could have compromised on defense. Well, that's a big issue. And you know what? Like talking about Evan Bouchard beating on Team Canada, there were too many peaks and valleys earlier in the year that I think was like, no, we can't risk this because he is a great offensive defenseman, but there were so many times where the defense wasn't there, and you just can't. No. I think it was too much of a liability. Unfortunately, you weren't getting enough, offensive sort of potential from that. That would outweigh the defensive issues. I think was the issue.
Well, especially since you're not going to have on PP1, that's obviously going to be Cale Makar's spot. And so, if you're going to go for more offense, that's why I was all for Matthew Schaefer, because at least you're getting that high-end dynamic, skating ability and ability to move that puck up, and, by himself, basically, like a one-man outlet, basically. So for me, it was Schaefer over Bouchard. I know it seems crazy, but like you said, we just didn't really need the offense at that point. So, you're taking Schaefer for that skating.
Now, John gets to one of the things I did want to touch on here today. We might as well get to it now. It's this Elias Pettersson talk, because obviously that's picked up a little bit. And some of the talk I was reading yesterday, just kind of, reading some of the insiders and all that, it sounds like, this is something that is out there. And I mean, we've heard this at past deadlines, but I think with the Canucks being in a different situation right now where they are going younger, they know they need to reshape this team. I think this is more of a realistic possibility. Saying that, though, the big sticking point, and you're mentioning it here, is the money retention. We know, and I'm sure you can back me up here. I've heard that they don't want to retain any salary, which I don't blame them, because they're already paying Oliver Ekman-Larsson until my kids are going to college. So, it's one of those things where I think that, I think if there was salary retained, they'd be more motivated to move. But what do you make of this? Like, I just have a feeling they're not going to trade him just because I don't think a team will take that full contract. But what is your thoughts on the temperature for Pettersson that's out there right now?
I agree. I think it's a fun conversation piece. I think it's, obviously a dream that we all have. I think just at this point, production aside, the players, I just think it's probably time for a reset. I just think, if anything, just go enjoy, I'm not going to be surprised one bit if he goes to, a Carolina, let's say, and, goes back, maybe not to full form, but, a very strong second line center. I just think it's time for a reset. So, but I do agree. I don't really see how you're trading him in a trade that works. 11.6 is a lot of money, and you just committed, and that's a long time to pay 11.6. So like you said, unless they're going to retain, why would you at this point? Because you just seem to retain on every single asset you sign. I just don't really see how it's a viable trade at this point.
I'm at the point too, and I want to get your take on this, where to me it's about just get off the contract. And I know that sounds bad because obviously this was considered a foundational piece, but I look at the contract, I look at the fact they're in a rebuild, and there's been some talk about this too. And I like Pettersson. I think I wish it would have worked out here, but is he the guy you want mentoring your younger players? I don't know about that, right? So I think there's that conversation too. LA seems like a good fit. I think it would make sense because, again, you're in a nice market there. You're not going to have that much pressure. They're not going to give up Quentin Byfield. We know that. But, if they could throw in some prospects and just take on the contract, I'm for it at this point. Like, are you of that same ilk at this point? Or are you still, because I just don't think you're going to get full value for Pettersson with that contract. If he's on a shorter contract, even if the cap hit is what it is, I think it's doable. But I think it's that long-term commitment to a lot of teams that is scaring people off.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a shame. It's crazy that we're even talking about this, especially since he just signed the contract. It's just, that's Canucks life, right? But yeah, I agree. At this point, again, not even, let's just say he's perfect going forward. I just think there's just been too much drama. There's just been too much for him to handle. And like you said, you're about to get a lot of picks coming up. You're about to get a lot of young, fresh blood into the organization. You got Braden Coots coming up. with a guy that has so much baggage attached to him, is he the one you want mentoring these kids coming up? There's no Quinn Hughes back there helping out. There's probably going to be, you got Philip Hronek, but other than that, like, who are the other character guys bringing you up? I just think at this point, in my opinion, let's start fresh. Like, just wipe the slate clean and just get people going. I think Pettersson is exactly in that realm. So sorry, I just realized I got a bunch of sun that came in my
don't worry about
my frame here. So
the heavens are maybe opening up here for a Pettersson trade. We'll see. Yeah. I don't know. But no, and Thomas Drance brought up something really interesting this morning on 650 about the Canucks may be buyers in the sense of taking on maybe a contract that other teams don't want to clear out cap space. He mentioned possibly a swap between like Vancouver and Buffalo, Bluger for like Jordan Greenway, who's got I think another year at $4 million. Like, I'm okay taking on a bad contract if it's shorter term and you can get off Pettersson. Like, I think that's the type of move that might make more sense. You throw in some picks, obviously, maybe throw in like a pick or a prospect or whatever. That's the type of thing that I think Vancouver should be looking at and looking to do, because that's one thing we haven't really seen, Dave, from this management group is taking on bad contracts. And granted, they were of the belief last year, and a lot of us were, that this is something of a playoff team. But I think right now, you got to be looking at those bad contracts, and I think it would be a disappointment. Like, let's put it this way: like, a lot of people have kind of mentioned like what would make Canucks fans happier. It's that they do something that's at least in the direction of like doing like trying to change the makeup of this team. And I think getting a bad contract would be a good start to that.
It's essential that they do that. This is what rebuilding teams have to do. And I think that is going to be the big test of whether they're actually being serious about whether they're a rebuilding team or not. We've heard all the talk. Now it's time to walk the walk, and taking on bad contracts to accumulate further assets. And by that, I mean draft picks. That's how you get this kickstarted. That's what it takes. It's unfortunate, but that you just got to face the reality. And at this point, like I said, this is when you're really going to find out if they're going to walk the walk and actually back up their comments about saying that they're in a rebuild, because that's how you get it done. That's one of the only ways to get it done. You need draft pick, and you get that by taking on bad contracts. So I think at this point, I think that's the only way you keep going, because they're running out of players to get, awesome picks at it. You got Teddy Bluger, you got Evander Kane, who let's see what he brings in. Beyond them, unless you're trading, Philip Hronek for maybe a first. Other than that, who else are you really trading to get a high-end draft pick? It's about accumulating more, taking on bad contracts, and getting it done.
Yeah, and Hronek is someone I would consider trading because he is probably a valuable asset for other teams. He's, obviously, and played well in the Olympics and all that. But now they're talking about making him captain, which I just don't get. Like, this is another bad move where, and listen, I think Hronek's a great player, but like, you've seen it. You've covered, Canucks events and stuff. He's not good with the media. There was that whole thing with him and Jeff Pettersson a couple of years ago where, like, it's still going on with Alan Walsh and Pettersson, right? Like, and Jeff asked a very legit question, like, were you injured? And he was kind of prickly about it. I think if you're trying to figure out the captain, not to change subjects, but like, give it to Tyler Myers until they figure out what the direction of this team is. And because we know Myers doesn't want to leave. He's not going to get traded. He's a veteran that is good in the locker room. Give him the C for now, and then they can figure it out when they actually know what this looks like. And then maybe you look at like a Zibulian when he gets a little bit older. I don't know. But like, I just think right now, like, that is just another like shake my head move at Canucks management if they're considering doing that.
Or just don't have one. Just realize that you're in a rebuild,
exactly.
And you're gonna look. We're gonna wait 2 years to see how these kids. Maybe Tom Vierlander's the captain. Maybe Steve Bouillam's ready. Maybe Braden Coots comes in 3 years. And I just think right now, is it really top priority to slap a C on someone? I don't know. I agree. Philip Hronek, maybe not in other parts of the league, maybe, but in Vancouver, Toronto, some of these big media heavy teams. It's essential that you can talk to the media and not be snappy with the media. You got to take that. Unfortunately, you have to be the face of the franchise. And, credit to them. I do feel that they have been kind of putting him out a little bit more lately. I feel like, Philip Hronek is talking a lot more than we've ever heard him. So, whether they're, grooming him to kind of, take on that captain, who knows? But I agree. I just, at this point, what are you in the hurry? I do like putting it on Tyler Myers, to be honest. I just think, if you're going to name him captain, go through all this, and then him being gone in a year or two, I just don't know if it's worth it. Like, at this point, just toss in 3 A's, 4 A's, and just, tell us who's going to be the next captain, right? So,
yeah. I agree. I like your idea better, actually. Yeah, that makes sense. Because you're right. Myers won't be here for more than a couple of years, so you might as well figure it out. Now, I'm sure you're going to, I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but I just think like a successful deadline for the Canucks at the bare minimum is not just the UFAs, but there's got to be one of those big contracts out of here. Would you agree? Like, I think fans will be more upset if they don't move Connor Garland or a Brock Besser. And I know they have no trade clauses and it's very complicated and difficult, but I just think that like the expectation has to be not just the UFAs. It has to be one of these other big contracts. Otherwise, you're not really doing a rebuild, like you said.
Exactly. I'm all for, as much as it sucks, you love Garland, you love Brock Besser as a person. It's time to just wipe the slate clean. It's time to just let it go, start all over again. You got a lot of fresh young blood coming in. That's just what it is. And not doing that has what's been the issue, ongoing issue for years and years and years. That's just compiled into all these buyouts and all this money being paid out all the time and all this up and down. You just gotta bite the bullet, get rid of everyone. I do realize that you do have to keep some veterans, and that's fine. But the problem is like you sign all these guys to very healthy, deserving contracts, and you just can't have that in a rebuild. So for me, you can sign all the, you want veteran presence, you can sign all those guys. You can sign your Nick Folignos, and you can sign the guys that you want to speak up in the dressing room. At this point, you just gotta wipe the slate clean, and for that's I totally understand that it might not be possible, but for me, that's what I'd like to see. I'm the prospect guy. Bring up all the prospects, let them all come up here and be
another. Yeah, I was gonna say that's another issue too. Like we saw yesterday with the lineups, I think Kane's on the first line, and I get you're trying to trade the guy. I think people know what Kane brings to the table. It's not like you need to showcase him and like prove to people what you need. But I'm with you. Like I want to see more of the Abbotsford guys, and that's another reason why I wanted to get you on, is because like I think it would be a good opportunity to see some of these guys up there, because they're losing down there. At least if you come up here, you're getting some experience a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it would be good to see, and that's been I think a critique of Foote all season, which is that he's not playing. Like Atu Ratu, what are you doing with him? Like that I don't get. Like he actually had good stretches, and for whatever reason they're playing David Comp over him, who was just sort of a stopgap when they had injuries. Like that's the type of stuff that drives me nuts, where it's like, well, if Ratu's not, if the coach doesn't trust him, why is he here? Right?
Why is he here?
So these are things that I hope sort of get resolved a little bit. Hendrick says we need more Americans on the Canucks to improve our team. I mean, they had a lot of Americans, and it hasn't. I know this is probably a troll, but just like they had this core, and it didn't get it done, right? Like it's so say what you want, and I'm with you. Like some of these guys may go elsewhere and have better pastures, and that just happens sometimes, right? Sometimes it takes a couple teams. I always look at what's his name, the Canucks guy they drafted that's on Florida now, the defenseman Gustav Forsling. He went through how many teams before he it clicked, right? Because I believe Carolina had him at one point. Yeah. So sometimes it's going to happen where like a player might not be at his full potential unless he's on the right situation, the right team. Look at Jalen Chatfield. He was here. He's a completely different player in Carolina than he was in Vancouver, right? So it's like, these are things that you have to look at that, again, saying more Americans. Now saying that, this is why I want McKenna over Steinberg, and we might disagree on this. It's because I think they need Canucks, you need something to be excited about next year. And I think
for sure.
If Gavin McKenna is your pick, and if you get first, great, then take McKenna. If you get second and he's available, you take McKenna. I just think of little things like, my kid wants to buy a Canucks jersey next year. Which jersey is he going to buy? McKenna was the obvious thing. Like if you get a Steinberg, it doesn't really have the same effect. I think they need more mix on this team, so that's, and you know what, you got to, as bad as this owner is, he has to be thinking about that a little bit from the financial side, that your Gavin McKenna jerseys are going to sell better than your Steinberg jerseys. They just are in this market, 100%.
You nailed it. I've been talking about this for months now, and I really like Ivor Stenberg. Honestly, I feel like because he's in the Swedish league, I feel like he maybe doesn't get as much play as your Gavin McKenna. And I do want to stress that Ivor Stenberg, he showed us at the World Juniors. He don't sleep on his skill. He's not, maybe he doesn't have the exact same swagger that McKenna does, but he's almost as skilled, if not just as skilled, and he plays that B game that you love. However, I do agree that if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you take McKenna all day because of everything you just mentioned. He's a marketable guy. He's a Canadian guy that team fans just seem to want right now. He also has that upside that could be elite star potential. Ivor Stenberg could as well, but I just with Gavin with Stenberg, it feels like you have that upside, but you also just have a nice floor. Whereas Gavin just seems to have this he could shoot for the stars and be a superstar in this league. He just has that kind of ability. So I agree.
The swagger. You saw that OT goal last week. That type of stuff does matter. Yeah, the even Conor McGregor tweet. Did you see the?
I saw that.
This is where my worlds are colliding again. But yeah, I mean, Conor McGregor's talking about it. that's the type of stuff that Canucks fans need, because most people know this. Canucks have never had a first overall pick. They've never had like a bona fide Canadian superstar in the market. Trevor Linden's probably about as close as they've had to like a high draft pick that they've had that's a Canadian. So it's been a while, and I think they need to go in that direction now and do that just to give the fans hope. Because I'll tell you what, people talk about the old heads anyways in the media. I'm not going to call it anyone, but you hear about this. Canucks fans can't stomach a rebuild. I'll tell you what they can stomach: watching Gavin McKenna play. That to me gives some hope, more so than some of the other names. But I also
he will put bum in the seats next year.
Yes.
Like he'll bring in fans
seats too, because I saw they fixed the seats at the arena, which is great. So
absolutely.
I just think you need to give fans a reason to be excited next year, because it is going to be a long road, right? And at least then you can say, hey, you can watch McKenna, all this stuff, and then we'll see how things sort of pan out beyond there. But I just think like that's such an obvious thing to do, and part of me too, though, this franchise cursed with so many things, like going back to when the franchise started, they didn't get the first overall pick, and so many other things, like the draft lottery, and it's like the Rangers or something first overall. Like I fear
New York Islanders last year.
Yeah, New York Islanders last year, exactly. Like they were talking. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the standings today too. Like St. Louis is probably going to do a bit of selling. Doug Armstrong traditionally in the past has done that type of selling. They're 7 points back of Vancouver. I think even if they did sell their assets, unfortunately, I think Vancouver's I should say fortunately in this case, but I think Vancouver will still be worse. I think St. Louis is, still, I mean, this was a playoff team, right? Last year. So I just don't see them falling that hard. Rangers are the ones that I look at because they seem a bit more dysfunctional, right? Like with Miller being captain and all that. That's the one I'm a bit worried about, but I still think Canucks have a good shot. But then again, it's the lottery, right? You never know. Like
Calgary's right there too. They're probably going to trade Kadri.
Yeah.
There's a couple teams that are going to be swapping. But I agree. I think no matter what, I think Vancouver what they've done this year is impressive in the worst way possible.
Yeah, and it's needed. Like, and again, like I also hear some people being like, this is a historically bad season. This has been needed for a while. I mean, I would rather have this and all the chaos and everything that's going on than what we've had the last decade, which is they might make the playoffs, they might not, and then we get that flash in the pan a couple seasons ago. It's like none of that's real. Like there's teams that are like that right now. Like there's still Leafs fans that have hope that they can make the playoffs and go on some run. That's not happening.
Yeah, LA. Oh yeah, there's a lot of teams right now that have that fraud mentality. But the Canucks are just they've been in the mushy middle for so long. It's true. This is just it's needed. It's going to be a long haul. Like I don't know if some fans are truly ready for just how long a rebuild can take or how bad it can get. But as we just talked about, Gavin McKenna is a real easy way to just kind of turn that upside down and at least bring some hope in immediately. So.
Let's talk a little bit about Abbotsford, because this kind of ties to the Canucks as well. So obviously Abbotsford's had a tough season. Is it one of those things? Because like I remember years ago when they first moved to Abbotsford, they just got all these like veterans and made like some team, and it obviously didn't work out. But they were like one of the highest paid teams there. Like how do you go about if you're the GM? Like is it just you hope for a good influx of prospects and hope that it works out there? Like how do you improve Abbotsford? Because I was actually surprised with how much turnover they had this year.
Yeah, and also lack of just bringing in solid veteran presence. I think injuries did play their part. Like, in their defense, I think they planned to maybe even have Aturatu, but Archdeep Bains, Max Sasson, like all these players, I think they expected to still be part of their core down in Abbotsford. So, I'll give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but they definitely not only didn't bring, like at one point they had 3 ECHL defensemen while Christian Wolanin was sitting at home waiting for a contract until November. And, they just decided not to bring him back. And so there was just a couple moves that just didn't really make sense. And I think some of it was injuries. I think some of it was hoping that, Vilmar Ulrichsen or some of their young rookies coming in would come in and save the day, which didn't necessarily happen. So I'm not, to be honest, I'm not really sure what the game plan was, because even next year, you got guys like, Braden Coots might make the team if he's not in Vancouver. But Riley Pettersson, he might come up and play with you. But other than that, there's maybe 1 to 2 forwards that are going to really come save the day next year as well. So what's your game plan this offseason? Is it going to be the same as last season? I just think there was a bit of, I don't want to call it short-sighted. I just think, I'm just not really sure why more veterans weren't brought in to
Insulate the
to
younger
help
players, yeah.
insulate the younger, if anything, to insulate the younger players. That's a great way to put it. Because there was some young guys, Vilmar Ulriksson, like within a month you had Vilmar Ulriksson playing, top line minutes, which just isn't good for any 20-year-old. You had Sawyer Minio playing 27 minutes a night on the back end. Great for him, not so great for the team though. Like it's just, this just wasn't the best environment, and it was like that from the get-go. So, like I said, I've said it a couple times already, but injuries did play their part. But I just don't know if the number of injuries, I don't think was an excuse for the number of people that they didn't bring back. So
yeah, I agree, totally agree with that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was just thinking about this too. Manny Malhotra's contract's up this year, is it not?
He took the option. Yeah.
Yeah. So this to me is another obvious thing for the Canucks right now. Adam Foote, I know people want to, there's that joke online about, keep him to tank again next year, but I mean, it's not good for the players. And it's pretty obvious there's coaching issues this year. I don't think there's a question about it, from line change issues to like just so many things. And listen, good for Foote for taking the job. Like anyone would do that. The obvious thing for next year is to get Manny Malhotra as the head coach of the Canucks, especially with what he's done with younger players. Like that seems like such an obvious move. Is there any chatter about that you've heard at all?
It's definitely chatter, but there's also chatter of other people wanting to go other. I mean, who was it? I forget where the team was, but they're talking about Johnson being hired as the GM. That's not good. Because if Johnson goes, there's a good chance that Manny is going to go as well. And at this point, I can't actually say if this is true or not. This is me kind of assuming, but you have to think Manny. Yeah, this is all speculation, but you have to assume Manny probably, felt a little bit of, oh, you're hiring Foote over me. Like I thought I was next in line. So if Johnson does go, I'm not going to be shocked at all if Manny does. He's not going to pass up an NHL contract. So, and at this point, I don't think it's a matter of if, it's when he's going to be an NHL coach. So I agree. If I'm the Canucks, I'm getting him up as soon as possible. Systematically, he doesn't change that much. But what he does bring is he just knows how to talk. I don't know if you've listened to him much, but he's so articulate. It's insane. And like as you mentioned, he knows all the young kids. He's bringing them up so well, and I think it's an easy hit, especially to kind of bring them up in the middle of a rebuild. I just think it's a perfect situation, and I think it needs to happen as early as last year. So
and I think too that again, he's a guy that if he doesn't have success because they're going through a rebuild, he's not going to get the same scrutiny that like other coaches would have in that position, because he's part of the 2011 team. Like there's that sort of grace as well that people I think would give him that. That to me seems like such an obvious thing. Bring Manny up. I think part of the reason, although we hear now that Quinn Hughes like kind of gave him the heads up a while back that he was leaving. So the only thing I can think about them bringing in Foote, and I was like kind of understanding it, is like you want to keep things as talkative as possible to keep Quinn and everyone else happy and see if this works. So I slightly understand them bringing Foote in because of that perspective. But now that everything's out in the open and you can see this is just an absolute disaster of a coaching staff, like to me, it's like it's so obvious to bring in Manny. And now I worry you had something good there with Abbotsford winning last year. Like to just let that go, I think would be so short-sighted. And you're right. Like he will, if Johnson leaves, then he goes, then that's maybe where you got to look at, I don't know. There's so many things. And then is Patrick Allvin going to be back? I don't know. Cause like he didn't do the Hughes trade and Rutherford said he was too busy. Like, is that a thing? Like there's a lot of things going on right now.
A lot of weird stuff.
So I just like, I hope for the best, but we're sort of used to disappointment. Before we go here, cause we'll do maybe like a couple more minutes here, just kind of wrapping things up. As far as like the draft, is there any, actually one name I did want to mention before we get into kind of that, Ryan Lynn, obviously local guy here. I believe he's injured right now, if I'm not mistaken. Is there, I know at one point there was some talk about top 10, but where do you sort of see him falling in the draft just based off how the year's gone?
Yeah, I definitely, I'll just say this, if he's not top 10, I'll be surprised. If he's not top 10, I would assume it's probably due to his size. He is a bit on the smaller side, especially for a defenseman. But when he's playing at his best, he's one of the smartest defensemen in the whole class. Like if he was 6'1", I bet you he goes top 5 this year, but I just don't, I think he will be top 10 though. I don't think he's a guy that if I'm a Canucks fan, I'm probably not expecting him to be a target. For various reasons. I just think if you're going to go for a defenseman, there's other defensemen you'll take. And then, they also just don't have an 8th, 9th, hopefully don't have an 8th, 9th, 10th overall pick. So I definitely think he'll go top 10. Great player. I just don't think he's going to be a viable Canucks pick.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. I was just curious because he goes to Delta Academy, which is kind of near did go to Delta Academy, which is kind of where the league my son.
Yeah, I just met him last week actually for the first time. Seems like a great kid too. So
yeah, so it's pretty cool to just see someone that's that local. That's again potentially going pretty high in the draft, which will be interesting. And that kind of brings me to another thing too. Like Keaton Verhoff's a name we've heard as well, just being in that top mix or whatever. And he was on Donnie and Dolly. Great interview. Like one of those guys that sounds like, how are you the age you are? Like you sound so mature. But I wonder if you're the Canucks too. Like you have so much defensive depth in the pipeline. I almost wonder if he is available, is that is that almost something you look at maybe trading down? I don't know. Obviously he's great and he's in a class of his own, and you can never, you always want to have as much defenseman, especially because they're such a commodity. But I just wonder they have so much defensive depth, which, I just wonder, do you maybe look at other options of using that pick or something else because you're so rich in that area?
Well, and that's what I was saying at the top of the show. If you do hit third overall, let's say, and Stenberg and McKenna are both going, that's where it does get interesting because if this organization needs anything, it's center depth. And so, but I'm just not fully, I don't think there's a third overall center in this draft. So yeah, is this the time that you do move up or move back, I guess, in the draft and maybe either recoup another first round pick, maybe another prospect in the mix, and then move down a couple picks and get a center, whether it's Caleb Malhotra, whether it's Tyler Lawrence, whoever it is. On the other side of the coin though, because that's where I'm at, to be honest. I do really like Keaton Verhoff, but I'm all for not picking him and trying to get a center in this draft. However, on the other side of the coin, if you do want to just take a Keaton Verhoff, I think at that point you're safe to just kind of try to accumulate more assets with a Philip Hronek trade. Because at that point, you've got Keaton Verhoff, a right-hand shot that, you're kind of hoping that would play almost a similar, basically fill in the exact same role as Philip Hronek down the road. So, that is the other thing. And, at the end of the day, you can never really have too many right-hand, top four defensemen. So it's not the end of the world. I just, for me as, the prospect guy, I need them to get some center depth because after Braden Coots, it's, Riley Pettersson has had a good season and he's playing he's up the middle this year, but it's just slim pickings. So need some center.
Or maybe you go even the other route where you do draft Verhoff and then maybe they look at trading one of those prospects. I think Elias Pettersson's kind of untouchable. I would think Vierlander's untouchable. Mancini's a name that we have heard a little bit out there, but again, they seem to like him too. So I wonder if you kind of, shuffle the chairs that way and maybe you find a home for him and try and get something out of it. So it's very tricky. There's just so many variables honestly, this is probably, I know it's cliche to say, but this is probably the most important offseason, draft / offseason in Canucks history, if you think about it, because it's really going to determine where this team goes for the foreseeable future, right? So
absolutely. All those variables that we just mentioned, there was 6 in there. Those are all extremely important decisions to make in the middle of this rebuild. Those are all very important things. So I agree. And that's why, you mentioned, you wonder if Alvin's going to be here. He better be here at this point because you've I know he apparently he didn't make the Quinn Hughes trade, but he was a part of the Quinn Hughes trade. That's step number 1. And if you're letting him do that, it's, you better just hopefully they have trust in him and he's just their guy. So at this point, in my opinion, it has to be them because they've kickstarted the most important trade this organization has ever done, and they're about to do one of the most important drafts that this organization has ever done. So
and the worst trade that you could argue other than Cam Neely, this Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade, which a key component of it was Connor Garland. He could be gone. I can't wait for the takes of just how bad that trade ended up being because Garland obviously we got a lot of good years out of him, but if he's gone, which they should trade him, it's going to bring back those old memories, and we're all going to watch Dylan Guenther in Utah and be like, oh, what could have been, So
well, not only just Utah, Team Canada.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
He'll be on Team Canada, believe me that. So
no, you're 100% right about that. Okay, last question before we get out of here. Do they trade one of those big contracts, do you think? What's your temperature on that? Do you think between the time I talk to you now and maybe the deadline, do you think one of those contracts goes? Yeah, me neither. I know.
I don't.
We're just so pessimistic because this is how the fact that they couldn't even trade Suter last year just makes me not give any hope.
Yes.
That, they're in that, realm of wanting to do things. And I know last year they thought they could make the playoffs, but I just think they almost to a fault sometimes are too much of a stickler of what you can get in return. I think in some cases, because if you look at their trades, they've actually been for the most part decent. Like, I don't think they've lost, like, even the Miller trade. I mean, the first round pick for Pettersson, that's a different story. Marcus Pettersson, that is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think overall, like, it's not like Miller's worked out for New York, really. Like, it, you know.
Nope.
So I don't know. Like, I think, like, they fixate a little bit too much on winning the trade. I think he just got to get out of the contract. I think that's what I would tell management if they're listening.
I agree. I think you nailed it with the P.S. Suter thing, though. Like, that was the most layup trade, like the most obvious trade deadline trade to make, and they couldn't make it happen. So no, I don't have any. I have no expectations of them moving in those contracts. Evander Kane, we'll see. I mean, at this point,
I think
better.
I think Kane, Bluger, and Kampf will probably get dealt. You might not get the return you want. You got to get better than a fourth, I think, for Kane if you can, especially if you're going to retain salary. There's got to be someone that can get you a third, I would think.
And Bluger, like Bluger, better be a third at this point too.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Bluger at least can face-offs, penalty kill, like all that. Like, he's, you know, there's a little bit more there. With Kane, it's like you're getting 2026 Evander Kane, which is a much different Evander Kane than the one that played with McDavid. Dave, you're the best. Thanks so much for doing this. Anything you got coming up you want to plug here? I'll give you the last word.
Not really. I'm taking a little bit of a breather. I just finished up our riveting top prospect rankings. We did a top 15 this year because it's so shallow. So just wrap those up. So go give those a read at Canucks Army. But now just getting ready for a lot of draft and some NCAA targets as well. I got a NCAA target list coming out this week. So yeah, just a lot of future stuff is what I'm focusing on now.
There we go. All right. Thanks, Dave. We'll be back next week on the Fanatics View Hockey Show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.